Good morning and happy Halloween, folks. Tougen Anki, episode 16, titled Not So Bad. And as far as the episodes go, it's not so bad. Let's talk about it. All right, guys, Brent here back for Geek Rants. Cover all things Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, anime, gaming. We cover a wide variety of stuff. If you're subscribed, you already know what we're about, or if you've liked one of our videos in the past and it's been suggested for you moving forward, you kind of know the deal. Tougen Anki continues to deliver solid episodes. Nothing is overwhelming, but everything is still good, if that makes sense. The appeal of Tougen Anki has always been the fact that it seems like a fairly generic anime, but it has a lot of deep telling in their stories at times, as we've kind of got a huge development pertaining to Kugasaki, pertaining to this episode, because Kugasaki, for all intents and purposes, was basically just edgy Sasuke. Like, let's just call it what it was. He was someone who had a tragic backstory, his family life sucked, out for vengeance, heart was closed off to everybody. We've seen it a thousand times in anime. Just Sasuke is the most obvious reference because this is going to get compared to one of the big three of the next generation if we decide to try and go that route, because the viewing numbers are there. Tuganaki is currently polling on Netflix as the second most watched anime, ahead of shows like Attack on Titan. And hey, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's better, I'm just saying that it's more viewed currently. So what we have going on here is Kogasaki finally letting people into who he is and what he's about. As it turns out, dude has an exceptional soft spot pertaining to kids, let alone little sisters or sibling relationships, which probably is telling me that in his life, or his life before he went to school, that he has a sibling he truly, truly cared about, or someone that made his life necessarily worth living. Because when he was explaining, like, all the way back, probably, I think probably episode 4, maybe episode 5, I can't really pinpoint which one, where he was talking directly about, like, hey, his life, like, I lived in the garbage, I used to live in attics, I used to live in vents, like, I've lived a terrible life, and I've eaten, well, just heinous things that no human being should ever have to eat. He has to have had someone or something that kept him going. Most people in those situations rarely get back on their feet, even though everyone and society wants them to be able to get back up on their feet, because no one wants to see other people doing horribly. It's a weird thing to want and a very, very odd thing to desire. So Kogasaki keeping things pushing is absolutely what we want for our hero. Unfortunately, because he keeps it pushing, Shinya has gained all this fabulous intel, and his quirk is exceptional for the gathering intel. As far as battle prowess, I would probably say it's about a negative, because the fact that you're able to, by using your bacteria and putting it inside usually liquids which people ingest, and then you can have up to 36 people being viewed for 24 hours, which I thought sound was included in this, but viewership as an eyesight obviously doesn't have any volume, because you have no ears. Eyes you can see, ears you hear. Obviously, if you were able to see 36 people, if you were had 20, like 36 different people viewing points to spy off of, having audio on top of that would just kind of be overwhelming at the same time. So you would have that plus your own senses. So there's 37. That's a lot of information to kind of go off of. And Shinya being able to see everything Kogasaki's doing and everything that he's have going on involving Shiki is definitely bad for the Momotaro, because now he's able to lay out his traps perfectly, gather where everybody's at, place his pieces exactly where it needs to be. And unfortunately, where he needed things to be done is the hospital, where he had one of the gang members burn down the building. He's just doing this to send a direct message and just kind of, pass off the buck of deflection of what's going on, how everything's being played out, only to have Shiki and Kogasaki basically be able to handle, because Shiki is able to handle heat, and Kogasaki, who apparently has a very high intellect because he's able to use the blood of the Oni from the agency to be able to use that quirk to be able to scan for that area for a long time, albeit at a loss of a significant amount of blood, most of which was coming from his eyeball, which is awful. And no matter how you look at it, anyone bleeding from the eye, like, ugh, that's extra nasty. Or That's just me. But they were able to get everything done because Shiki's able to withstand heat, likely because he's a child of Kishin. He was able to, basically burst into flames when he had his battle at the earlier part of season one's core. So we're able to see what's exactly going on there. As we're leaving, Kogasaki has just a giant amount of rubble fall upon him. He's trapped, he's exhausted, he's tired, but he's like, I kind of did exactly what I needed to do. If I die here, that sucks. But like, I did what I wanted to do, and that's at the end of the day the most important thing to him. So hey, huge wins for him, but at the same time, not really what we all initially thought was going to have happen. And then we have, of course, Shiki busting in, saving him, which is confusing the crap out of Kogasaki because he's like, it's not logical to save me. I don't know why he's doing this. It makes no sense that he's saving all these other people. Like, it always kind of pisses me off that he keeps like helping others because he just doesn't understand the logic of it. Because logically, being selfless is dumb. It doesn't really serve you at any moment in time. But by being selfless, you're able to pay things forward, gather people around you, and grow yourself up to be a stronger individual. Which Shiki's not really doing it to like gain power, but at the same time, he's gaining a rather large influence among his friends, and people starting to trust and believe in him because he's willing to do the selfless thing. Sure, he's got basically the IQ of a rock, and he talks too much. He's too brash. He's just like a typical anime main character where you look at him like, yeah, there's basically two brain cells in there, but push comes to shove, I trust that dude in my life. And that's where we're at with things. Shiki's able to make those moments happen. And Kogasaki eventually says, thank you so much for saving me. But because he says it so quietly in the middle of a burning down building, Shiki doesn't hear him. Is like, dude, you need to speak up, which of course turns into a yelling match because why wouldn't it? And like on their way to the hospital earlier, Mudino pulls off and pulls back from what's going on here, sensing an actual danger. So Mudino is going to be throwing down here very, very shortly. So it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to be able to have everything put into place because as well, we have Mikado, who is, kind of having a interesting conversation with Natsu, our boy Shiki, which puts everything in perspective for Shinya because he's like, I have an absolutely astute way of getting a hold of you, so now I can get a better shot at the child of Kishin because my number two is already best friends with him. They've exchanged phone numbers, they've exchanged pleasantries. I can make some things really, really happen here. And then because he was able to get, a voice to a person as a supervisor, he was able to be like, kind of gain some ground with Shiki. So Shiki's not gonna be smart enough to put everything together, even though Kogasaki is starting to scope things out and trying to be like, why would they do this? Why would they do that? It doesn't really make sense. Nothing's really adding up. We need to delve further in this, get more information, try and figure out what's going on, which of course is what Shiki was making the phone call for. But as we end the episode, Mudino is basically in a weird, weird situation where he's hanging out in a park basically by himself versus Osuke. Osuke is just kind of hanging out there and has been waiting for this match for a long, long time because again, Mudino had 100 kills of Momotaru. There's going to be a get back. And will our teacher be able to pull through? Well, we'll have to be subscribed to find out, as that'll happen apparently next week. We'll get some actual answers pertaining to that. So the action will return then. It was a solid episode. Not a lot of fighting, but at the same time, we got a lot of really good developments pertaining to our characters, which is what I truly love. Happy Halloween to you, and happy Hallows Eve to those who celebrate it pertaining to it called that way. Brett for Geek Variants. I'll be back tomorrow. My Hero Academia.